Hello, Professor.
Hello, I can hear you.
Yeah, everything's
Can you-
okay, right?
Can you hear me?
Yes. Test
Okay.
positive. We haven't started yet. We just to make sure the thumbs
Aha.
and the video.
So the public is not yet in.
Not as a bit of some of them are already
Yeah,
in
we
the
are-
meeting room, but not yet.
Okay.
Professor video. We can see you. We can see you. Yes.
And Professor Rudy Bauer, and we since we haven't started yet, you may just keep the video on and turn off the audio. Yeah, thank you. Hello, Professor Monica. Hello, Professor.
Boa tarde.
Boa tarde. Bom dia. 没开声音。
没有显示网络状态。
你又只有一格了。没关系，你那边不用录屏什么的，你只是点。
Olá, Portugal. Aqui é China.
Bom dia.
Tudo
Bom
bem,
dia,
tudo
bom
bem.
dia.
Bom dia para vocês, boa noite para nós.
叫那个谁进来赶紧，他们是两个地方是。分包了。要找不到他们。
我嘅教大啲啊，我呢度可以教，係你電腦嘅嗰個聲，係嘛？我呢個夠大。
你好，叶主任，你好。你好，叶主任，可以看到我们吗？可以听到我们的声音吗？
可以听到你们。
好，谢谢叶主任，谢谢叶主任。我们还有3分钟，马上开始活动。
在哪里？
And Professor Rudy Bauer, Professor Emilio, Professor Monica, all professors, we're going to start the activity in 2 minutes. Professora Mônica, professor Paulo Sargento, ele está preparado?
Sim, Gil, ele deve estar mesmo a entrar.
Ok, obrigado.
Tổng một đại xe. Cái đi xe nó một.
Sim, estou a falar por WhatsApp. Hello?
好，大家好，这里是
Hello, everyone.
合作中医药科技产
This is
业
International
国
Youth
际
TCM
研究
Practitioners
交
Exchange
流
Base
基地我是成员
Gmtcmpark.
合作中心的
My name is Zhou Ting. I'm with the International Collaboration and Exchange Center. My name is Li Dihui. I'm also with the International Exchange and Collaboration Center.
中医药新冠疫
Here
情时代下的
for the 8th TCM Youth Talk discussion on the role of traditional TCM in the COVID-19 pandemic. We are very honored to have invited participants from Macau, Portugal, Austria, Mozambique. They are all TCM practitioners, and they're going to talk about TCM and COVID-19, traditional medicine, TCM clinic, etc. And we have the honor to have the following guests of honor, including Ms. Jessie Sun, Director of Center of International Cooperation and Exchange, Gmtcmpark. Professor Rudolf Bauer, Chairman of TCM Working Party of European Pharmacopoeia, Deputy Head of the Pharmaceutical Biology Institute of Pharmaceutical Sciences, Chief Physician Ye Ling, Affiliated Hospital of Fujian University of Traditional Chinese Medicine. Professors Sarah Pereira and Professor Natalia Rock of the Polytechnic Institute of Satubao. Natalia is teaching and she will join us shortly. And we also have Teresa on behalf of the Dean of ARISA, Paulo Sargento. And we also have Professor Emilia and Professor Monica ARISA. Welcome. Let's give a round of applause. Now I announce the commencement of today's webinar. First, may I invite Ms. Jessie Sun, Director of Center of International Cooperation Exchange, Gmtcmpark. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the base. I would say welcome to all the old friends and new friends. Welcome to the webinar. And 2020 has been a very unique year. The outbreak of COVID-19 poses a great challenge to all mankind. And it is a battle of endurance. And I would like to pay my respect and gratitude to all the frontline workers and doctors and experts. Under the pandemic, no country is an island. We need to build a common destiny of all humankind. And we need to be looking out for each other to survive this pandemic. On the battleground in China, TCM has been playing an important role. And we noticed that traditional medicine has been also playing a role in the study and treatment of the pandemic. And we are very honored to have invited Professor Rudolf Bauer from Austria and Professor Yeling from Fujian, and Professor Sarah and Natalia and Paulo from Portugal, and Professor Monica from Portugal as well. And they will be talking about the impact from the TCM treatment and the quality of drugs on the front of the fighting against the pandemic. And I hope you'll be inspired from the webinar and you can learn something and use what you have learned at the seminar in your practices. And I think for those who have participated in our activities at the base, the Gmtcmpark is an important carrier for TCM promotion in Macau. And we have been carrying out a lot of work in terms of promotion of TCM and nurturing international talents, especially in Portuguese-speaking countries, the EU, ASEAN, and the Belt and Road Initiative countries. And at this base is for peers in the TCM for the professional information, professional training, and professional practices. Since the establishment of this base in September 2018, we have organized a total of 25 TCM trainings, clinical trainings, exchange salons, and consultations. And a total of 2,700 people have participated in these activities from all around the world. To further carry out collaboration, we initiated the Amigo Alliance program. And so far, we have a total of 10 universities from China, Portugal, Mozambique, Cape Verde, which have joined the alliance. And I would like to thank all the partners of Amigo for their support. And I hope with the exchange and nurturing of talents, and we will provide more jobs for TCM students and the TCM practitioners. And once again, thank you, my old friends and new friends, for your selfless sharing. And I hope you will learn something from this webinar. And thank you again, and good luck, everyone. Well, many thanks to Ms. Sun for her speech. And now, may we invite Professor Rudolf Bauer. And he will be talking about quality issues of TCM herbs used for COVID-19 from a European perspective. Please give a round of applause. Professor Bauer, the floor is yours, please.
Still mute the microphone.
请鲍尔教授打开您的 audio。
鲍尔教授，请接受我们的通过您打开录音的申请。
鲍尔教授可能需要您先停一下，打开您的。这样我们可以听到您的声音。
教授，请您通过我们的申请，我们将会打开您的麦克风。
Professor Bauer,
Yes, we can hear you.
can you hear us? We need you to unmute the microphone. Yes, please.
We have sent you a permission to open your microphone. Can you accept it? Can you see?
Okay,
Okay.
now it's okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Professor
I
Bauer.
think
Because from the beginning, we didn't hear you. So could you please, from the beginning, we would like you to start it again. Thank you.
yeah, I was unfortunately not able to unmute by myself. I think you have to do
Okay,
it.
we can hear you now.
Now it's okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Very good.
Professor. Okay.
So
Yes. Thank you.
Clearly.
I'm now very happy to speak to you, and really I want to welcome all the participants from China and from all over the world, from all these countries who are connected to listen to this presentation. I think it's, of course, a very sad situation that we cannot travel and that we cannot meet in person, but at least these online meetings allow us to connect and really to exchange also ideas and views. And I think this is very important because this COVID-19 crisis, I think, is a global challenge, and it can only be overcome if we really interact globally and if we really join forces and really work together. So it's, I think, very good that we have such meetings and that we can exchange our views. So I'm in Graz in Austria and in Europe, and for that reason, of course, I'm talking to you from a European perspective. As you have heard, I'm also chairman of European Pharmacopoeia, Working Party for Chinese Medicine, which means I can tell you the situation about Chinese medicine in Europe, and will do it with a perspective also directed to COVID-19 and the herbs which are used for this disease. Now, although I'm the chairman, I want to also explain you that I'm not talking on behalf of the European Directorate of Quality of Medicine, but I'm talking just as a private person, as a professor from University of Graz, and I will not present you the view from IDQM. This is just a disclaimer. Now, the situation with COVID-19, I think, is known to you quite well. These are some numbers a few days ago, and it has become probably even worse in the meantime. And you see that we have still a steep increase in United States of America. We have also a very steep increase in India still, and in Brazil. Also in Europe, you're watching probably the news, and you see that some countries in Europe, like Spain and France, they are really now again threatened with high numbers of infections. Also UK, also Germany, I think, has decided yesterday to have let's say a simple lockdown again, which means that also the numbers in Europe are increasing. On the other side, if you see now the numbers in China, and you probably all know these numbers better than me, you see that China, of course, were high at the beginning, but they are now very, very low. And this means China obviously has found ways really to control this disease quite well. And of course, there are many measures to do this. And at least one measure, I think, is also the use of Chinese medicine. And at least it is also in the news, or it was in the news, that China was such effective in fighting COVID-19 by using Chinese medicine. And according to this report, 90% of the patients obviously have taken Chinese medicine also, which obviously really also supported this fight of the disease and ended up in a situation that Chinese now has quite a low number and also maybe less severe cases. So the question is really whether Chinese medicine can also help countries outside. And I think China has supported Italy, maybe Spain and other countries with providing Chinese medicine. So I think this is something how we can really collaborate in a global way. Now, the Chinese medicine, as far as I know, was mainly relying on 6 different recipes and 6 mixtures, which have also become quite famous. And for that reason, of course, these are some recipes which may be also something by which we could support the fight in a global way. But we have also to realize that it needs some requirements. Now, when we analyze these mixtures, then you see that they are in special categories of Chinese medicine or the top 3 used herbs in these mixtures, and it shows you clearly which plants have been most frequently used in the fight of COVID-19 in China. It was a paper published recently in Chinese medicine. And you see that, for example, Scutellaria bicalensis, Lonicera, of course, Forsythia suspensa, and several others, they really play the major role in the fight of this disease. And I think we have to focus on these plants when we want to develop also, let's say, modern drugs. If you talk about drug development and also drug approval in Europe, we have to realize that we have a lot of regulations, of course, which have to be fulfilled in order to be accepted as a drug and as a medicine. And the same applies also to Chinese medicine, which means drug regulation, of course, has to be followed. And one requirement is, of course, to have evidence of efficacy, which means we need controlled clinical studies which really demonstrate efficacy. And conducting such studies, it's also necessary to use standardized products, which are really equivalent from batch to batch and not highly variable. And in addition, we may do some research also on the mode of action. There are several aspects for fighting this virus. And we may also identify active principles, which could finally lead to also to effective drugs, which are based then on pure molecules. So I think these are the aspects which research can contribute to this development. And as you see here, efficacy and safety, they are really based on quality, which means if quality is not reliable, then also efficacy and safety is not reliable. And we have really to set a very solid base, a very solid quality in order to have reproducible safety and efficacy. And that is why I'm now focusing really on the quality aspects of these herbs and want to explain you what needs to be controlled in order to have really highly standardized drugs and products. Of course, we have to see that we are relying on natural raw material, different herbs, and this natural raw material, of course, has some variation. It's very normal. We have varieties. The time of harvest is very relevant, the type of drying. So there's a lot of influence from aspects which are related to the raw material. Second, the processing of the material, of course, has impact on the quality. It depends on the size of the raw material, on the extraction process, extraction medium, and others. So this, of course, needs also to be highly controlled. And at the end, we have the manufacture of the final product and some aspects of storage, shelf life, time, and also impact of the formulation, which means there are really many, many aspects which can influence the quality of such. We have to realize that the most essential part of the quality control is at the beginning, when we analyze the raw material for the production, because there is a saying, garbage in, garbage out, which means if we don't use high quality raw material, we cannot produce high quality products. Therefore, we have to put a strong focus on this aspect. The European Medicines Agency, which is relevant for drug approval in Europe and drug regulation, has published a series of guidelines which really outline very precisely what is needed for drug approval in Europe. All these guidelines can be downloaded, they are open access from the EMA webpage, and you will find guidelines for good agricultural and collection practice, guidelines for quality control, guidelines for specifications, guidelines for combinations, guidelines for stability testing. So everything is outlined very much in detail and needs to be consulted when a company is really intending to bring a product to Europe and to get marketing authorization in Europe of such a herbal mixture. I cannot go into detail on all these regulations, but I want to focus on the quality control and the specifications. And as has been mentioned, I'm the chairman of this working party in the European Pharmacopoeia Commission this working party is elaborating monographs for quality control of Chinese herbs since 2008. And you see, the group of experts is composed of many nationalities, European countries, but also a number of colleagues from China are collaborating. So we are really trying to use all these expertise to prepare monographs for the European Pharmacopoeia of Chinese herbs, which are, let's say, of high standard and high quality. So far, we have elaborated 73 monographs, which have already been adopted by the European Pharmacopoeia. And this is, let's say, necessary for a simplified approval procedure. Because as long as companies are using the monographs of the European Pharmacopoeia, there will be no further questions for quality control. And that is one important reason why we need such monographs in Europe, really to simplify drug approval of Chinese products in Europe. We are still working on other monographs, and 30 are attributed to specialists. And once we have elaborated a draft monograph, it is published in an online journal called Farm Europa. It's an open access online journal. And there you can find all the drafts of the monographs before the adoption. And this means everyone can really send in comments and can suggest improvements of the monographs before they are finally adopted and published. We have also some general monographs on methods, for example, on processing, aristolochic acid testing, and pyrrolizidine aldehyde testing, which may also be relevant for Chinese herbs. Now, the aspects of quality control are very similar to China. I think we have a clear definition of the material. We have tests for identity, tests for purity, And this means tests for adulterations, for foreign matter like heavy metals, pesticides, mycotoxins, fumigation agents. This all needs to be tested if before marketing a product, a herbal product in Europe under drug license. In addition, we have also microbiological testing and test for residual solvents in case extracts are used which have been prepared by particular solvents. And finally, we have an assay, and the assay or the content of particular constituents may rely on compounds which have known therapeutic activity, or also on compounds which may not be active. They are considered as pharmaceutical markers, and both is currently possible. Now, the challenges which we are facing in our work are on the one side about the identity and the authenticity of the species. Sometimes it's not very clear whether the material is really authentic. Then we have sometimes disputes about the relevant marker compounds, whether these compounds really are relevant for the overall quality of the material. We are also facing the problem of poucher, of processing, because these methods also have impact on the quality of the material, on the constituents. Therefore, these processing methods need also to be clearly standardized and be very precise in terms of endpoints in order to have really reliable and reproducible quality. Sometimes we are dealing also with toxic constituents like aristolochic acid and polyolefin alkaloids, and also with some contaminants. We have sometimes issues also with admixture of synthetic drugs, which may be a problem and which of course is not allowed. We have to deal with complex mixtures, and this can be solved usually with high standard chromatographic methods. And we are also facing the situation that more and more granules are used, which means not the raw material, not the decoction pieces, but already dried extracts. And this, they need, of course, additional testing. For identity tests, we have several methods which are used in the pharmacopoeia, mainly macroscopic and microscopic methods, but also chromatographic methods like TLC, for example. So far, European pharmacopoeia is not using spectroscopic methods and also not using DNA analysis. This is still, I think, a matter of time. Now, the tests for contaminants are outlined in the European Pharmacopoeia in several monographs. And you see we have monographs for heavy metals, microbiological testing, pesticide residues, aflatoxin, aristolochic acid, ochratoxin, and pyrrolizidine alkaloids, which is in progress. And I want to show you just in brief the specifications. So for heavy metals, we have limits for lead, cadmium, and mercury, which are 5 ppm, 1 ppm, and 0.1 ppm. And of course, all the Chinese and any other herbs need to comply with these limits. For pesticides, we have around 70 limits set in the European Pharmacopoeia for the most commonly used pesticides. But in total, there may be 600, 700, 800 pesticides used worldwide. And in case any other pesticide is used, also other limits apply, which are regulated in Europe, for example, for food also. So this is also relevant for herbal drugs. For microbial contamination, we have 4 categories and also 2 monographs which are outlining the test procedures and also the different limits set by the European Pharmacopoeia. We have 3 categories, category A, B, and C, depending on the intended use. So category A is the one which is intended for the preparation of infusions and decoctions. And it means it's using boiling water, which is reducing the microbial load, and therefore the limits in this category can be higher compared to category B or C, in which no such treatment is applied, which means in these categories the limits are a little lower. But in general, I would say we have to go for the lowest limits, because we don't know the type of use. And you see also that, for example, Salmonella is not allowed, and E. coli is also should mostly be not detectable. This is just the same in Chinese. Now, for aflatoxins, which are very potent liver toxins, we have also very strict regulations in Europe. In the European Pharmacopoeia is a limit of 2 microgram per kilogram for aflatoxin B1, and German regulation has even more specific limits for aflatoxin M1 and some others. So this is also an obligatory test, and mainly seeds are contaminated with these toxins, because there's this fungus, this mold, Aspergillus flavus, which is producing this toxins. Also for ochratoxin, which is another fungal toxin, we have a regulation in Europe, and the limit is 5 nanogram per kilogram body weight per day. This slide just shows you the situation of some testing, and you see that it's mainly the seeds which are contaminated with aflatoxin. It was Uli-Ren and Beizi-Ren, which was highly contaminated. Also, some fruits from rice were contaminated. So we have to be careful about these toxins. Another toxic compound is these pyrrolistine alkaloids, but they are not contaminants. They are produced by particular plants like Licularia, Senecio, Lithospermum, Onosma. These plants, which are mainly from the Boraginaceae or Asteraceae family, they are known to produce such pyrrolistine alkaloids. And these pyrrolistine alkaloids are also known to be liver toxic, and therefore we have a regulation in Europe that not more than 1 ppm should be applied. And since some of the Chinese herbs are also containing these compounds, we have also to be careful and have to apply a test. The European Medicines Agency has recently published a recommendation for pyrrolistine alkaloids, and it says that the intake should not be more than 1 microgram per day, which means we have to know how much pyrrolistine alkaloids are in the material, and we have also to know how much is consumed, and then we can calculate the load. And so this requires a proper testing of the raw material, and also testing of the transfer rate, for example, into decoctions. Then we can judge whether this limit is finally respected. The European Pharmacopoeia is currently implementing testing procedures, because it's a very tricky analysis using, for example, LCMS, to ensure that these limits are really can be controlled, and this monograph is still in elaboration. Just to show you one example, this is Guangdonghua, and a plant which is also well known in Europe, and containing some pyrrolistine alkaloids, as you can see here. And we have determined the content. It was 1.6 milligram per kilogram. And if you calculate now this load based on the consumption, it would mean that only 0.6 gram of these flowers would be allowed per day. Regularly, of course, we are using more in such mixtures. So this shows you that such testing is really necessary. One challenge is also that we know about 28 different toxic pyrrolystin alkaloids. So we really have to apply a very comprehensive testing. And this, of course, is quite an effort and also costs, of course, a lot of money. So this is also in progress. So if you want to know in the European Pharmacopoeia, you can always consult a so-called knowledge database. It's free, open access, and you can find it in the internet via this URL. And then you can search for particular names of the material of the plant, and you will find the information whether this monograph is already published in Pharma Europa or whether it is published in any supplement of the European Pharmacopoeia. And then you, let's say, know exactly the status. You can even download some chromatograms. You can download the history of the development of this monograph. And you can also see which reference substances and which columns and so on are used. So this is very useful information. And I'm really recommending to use this knowledge database because it's really free access. And coming back now to the original list of plants which are used for COVID-19, I have analyzed by the European Pharmacopoeia. And you see here, I also put it into an order of mostly used in such mixtures. And you see that most of these herbs have already been covered by the European Pharmacopoeia or maybe are in elaboration, and only few are missing. So at the very end, I think it's really maybe possible to bring such products to Europe and really to go for marketing authorization, which is of course a little lengthy process, but at least I think from the quality aspect, there is a very good chance to also bring such products to Europe. And then I think we may be even more strong in fighting COVID-19. So I think Chinese medicine can definitely contribute to the fight against COVID-19. We need some research on efficacy and safety and also on quality control. This is based on pharmacopoeia monographs, and that's why it is so important really to elaborate such monographs in Europe. We need tests for identity, for purity and contaminants, as well as assays. And I think this is all in progress and is available now. And therefore, I think the European Pharmacopoeia is really providing very valuable and very important work, and can at the end also really help in fighting the COVID-19 crisis. So I hope that I could tell you something new and could also encourage you to develop such products for Europe. I think there's a chance, and I hope to see many such products in the future on the European market. Thank you very much. 谢谢。
感谢 Rudolf Bauer 教授的精彩发言。中草药的质量标准之间。
Thank you, Professor Bao. As you said rightly, the quality of medicines is very important.
Thank you, Professor
in
Bauer.
TCM.
Thank you.
And I think we need to
那
put
么
more
现
work
在呢
into
是
this
Q&A 的
in the
环节
future.
那么大家对于刚才鲍尔教授的发言呢，包括它的主题和内容，有什么想要
Now it's time for
欢
Q&A.
迎大家
If
踊跃
any of you has any questions with respect to Professor Bauer's speech, please ask your question. And first you press unmute, and then you press the raise hand button. And we will accept your request. And you can also click on chat and send your question to our chat room. And our staff will collect all your
好的，那
questions
么现在
for
呢，我们看到
our
已经
guests
有
to answer. And now
有不
we
少要
see
不少提问
there
的
are
问题来了。
several
我们现在有
questions
一个
so far.
通过一个平台上
we
收集到的
have
第一个问题，那么我们
the
现在
first
邀请一下
question
保尔教
collected.
授。
We want to ask Professor Bao.
Professor Rudy, I have one question collected from YouTube. The question is, my concern is about the principle underlying the definition of marker compounds. From European perspective, are they identified based on their bioactivities or contents?
Yeah, of course, the best is if in case we know the constituents which are relevant for the therapeutic effect. In that case, we are focusing on these compounds and are using these compounds as markers. If, let's say, these active or this relevant, pharmacologically relevant compounds are not known, then of course we have to use other markers which may be relevant for stability, which are only pharmaceutical markers, but maybe not yet known whether they contribute to the activity. Unfortunately, we still have only little knowledge about the active or relevant compounds. And therefore, I think we need also more research which finds out the relevant compounds. And as long as, let's say, we have such a situation, we have also to assume that there are not only one, but there may be many compounds contributing to activity. According to European regulation, the active principle of a herbal product is not a single constituent, but it is regularly the whole extract, which means it is a very holistic approach, and that also requires a holistic approach in the quality control. For that reason, for example, fingerprint analysis by HPLC or also maybe by HPLC, such fingerprint analysis gives you, of course, a much better idea about the overall quality than a single marker. So this is just, I would say, in progress. We have not yet established such monographs based on fingerprint analysis, but I think in the future, this will be the way to go.
好的，谢谢教授。我相信我们的场外观众已经听到了您的答案，的确是针对我们这个需要继续做更深入的研究。
对，那么我们现在场内呢有一位青年的中医生想要向保尔教授提问，那么我们现在连线一下这位中医生。
你好，Woody 宝，Professor Woody 宝，你好，我是澳门的青年中医生，我这边有一个问题想
TCM practitioner from Macau. I have a question for you. In China pharmacopoeia, we update it every 5 years, and the update affect the drugs and the side effects. We update such information. And TCM practitioners in Macau and on the mainland, we adjust our treatment according to the updates. My question is, how often is pharmacopoeia in Europe is updated?
this request is transferred to the expert group, and the expert group starts to deal with this request, and then the monograph may be updated. So it's a continuous process which can happen every year and at any time. It's not only every 5 years, but it's continuously done.
好的，谢谢你。
好的，好的，非常感谢鲍尔教授。
Many thanks to Professor Bao. And we have another question from the floor. There's a Dr. Mr. Ye who has a question for Professor Bao, and we're going to put him online as well. Hello, Professor. I have one question for you. In China, in Italy and Russia, TCM has been used because there are many Chinese populations in these countries, and it has good effects on COVID-19. My question is TCM has been used in fighting COVID-19 in Austria? If the answer is no, what can we do to make TCM be used in Austria to fight COVID-19?
Has not yet been so serious at the end, and so far the government in Austria did not make any official statement that Chinese medicine should be used. We are currently trying really to convince the Austrian government also to consider Chinese medicine as an important support, but so far it's no official recommendation. However, we have a lot of practitioners who are using Chinese medicine and who are prescribing Chinese medicine. So I think on an individual basis, there may be some people using it. And you can also find, for example, dietary supplements, such mixtures which are used against COVID-19, which you can buy, for example, in the internet, which may be used by particular patients. But so far, we have no official recommendation by the government. And this, okay, it may change once the situation becomes more serious, but we are really trying. We have also contact to the Ministry of Health, and we are trying to convince them that Chinese medicine may be useful.
好的，感谢大家的提问，
Thank you, Professor Bauer.
谢谢。我们尊敬的鲁多夫鲍尔教授，由于时间的原因
So I think Dr. Rudy Bauer will need to leave our session. Thank you very much, Dr. Bauer, again for your presentation. It was very inspiring. So I hope that in the next meeting we can meet again. Thank you again, Professor Bauer. Okay, then we will continue our meeting. We will have Chief Physician Ye Ling from Affiliated Hospital of Fujian University of Traditional Chinese Medicine to talk about the presentation. The topic is COVID-19 Diagnosis and Treatment Plan, the 8th Trial Edition, Interpretation of TCM. Dear guests, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. I am very happy to share with you the tentative 8th edition of Diagnosis and Treatment Protocol for COVID-19 patients. So my name is Ye Ling. I am from the Affiliated Hospital of Fujian University of TCM, and also I am from some of the medical teams in China. So we know that the 2019 novel coronavirus belongs to the beta genus of coronaviruses. It has an influx and is round or oval with a diameter of 60 to 140 nanometers. And SARS, I'm sorry, Dr. Ye, we cannot see your share screen. Can you reopen it? I'm sorry. We are live streaming, so I don't know if it's because of the delay of time on the internet or. Yes, we can see your share screen now. Do I need to go back? Maybe, can you start from slide 2? Slide 2 is my introduction, so I'll skip it. Please continue. So SARS-CoV, I'm sorry, Dr. Ye, we cannot see your share screen again. Maybe just do it, show your slides in this way. Thank you very much, Dr. Ye. So the coronavirus shares 79% nucleotide sequence identity with SARS-CoV coronavirus and 51.8% MERS coronavirus. Is sensitive to ultraviolet rays and heat, can be deactivated under 56 degrees Celsius for 30 minutes or by ether, 70 ethanol containing disinfectant, etc. So its source of infection can be seen as follow. It's mainly patients with SARS coronavirus 2 infection as well as asymptomatic infection. Patients are infectious during incubation period and are highly infectious within 5 days after the onset of disease. So the routes of transmissions are mainly through droplets, close contact, contact with items contaminated by the virus, and prolonged exposure to high concentration aerosols in a closed environment. And we also need to pay attention to aerosol or contact transmission in an environment contaminated by feces and urine. And susceptible population actually is everyone. After infection or vaccination, one can develop some immunity, but with unknown duration. The incubation period is 1 to 14 days, mostly 3 to 7 days. Main manifestations are fever, dry cough, fatigue, anosmia, and arrhythmia may be presenting symptoms in some patients. A few patients have symptoms such as nasal congestion, running nose, sore throat, and diarrhea. Severe patients often develop dyspnea or hypoxemia 1 week after the onset of the disease. Some severe patients may have moderate to low-grade fever or even no fever during the course of the illness. In critical cases, symptoms can quickly progress to acute respiratory distress syndrome, septic shock, refractory metabolic acidosis, and coagulopathy. A small number of patients may also have central nervous system involvement and peripheral ischemic necrosis. So, from our clinical cases, most patients have a good prognosis, and a few patients become critically ill. So high-risk groups include people aged 65 or above, or those with underlying diseases such as cardiovascular or hypertension, chronic lung diseases, diabetes, chronic liver diseases, chronic kidney diseases, malignancies, etc. And those with immunosuppression, for example, HIV, and also those with obesity, because their body mass index is over 30, or late pregnant and perinatal women and heavy smokers. These are high risk groups. And our stats show that over 90% of severe and critically ill patients belong to high-risk groups. So we need to pay close attention to these people so that we can discover severe cases as early as possible and intervene at an early stage to stop the progress of the disease. Our diagnostic criteria for suspected cases, first we look at their epidemiological history. So firstly, we look at the history of residents in a community with case reports within 14 days before the onset. And then the history of contact with patients with COVID-19 within 14 days before the onset. And contact with patients with fever or respiratory syndromes from communities with case reports within 14 days before the onset. And also cluster cases. 2 or more cases of fever or respiratory symptoms occurring in small areas such as homes, offices, schools within 2 weeks before the onset. We also look at clinical manifestations, including fever and respiratory symptoms and radiologic features compatible with COVID-19 and normal or decreased white cell count and lymphocyte count in the early stage, having any of the epidemiological history and any 2 of the clinical manifestations. And also, we see if they meet all of the 3 clinical manifestations in those not having any epidemiology history or meeting any 2 of the clinical manifestations and having a positive SARS coronavirus 2 specific IgM antibody test in those not having any epidemiologic history. So our diagnostic criteria for confirmed cases are below. For suspected cases who meet any of the following criteria, we can confirm RT-PCR test positive for SARS coronavirus 2, gene sequencing of the virus highly homologous to the known sequence of SARS coronavirus 2, positive tests for SARS coronavirus 2 specific IgM and IgG antibodies, and seroconversion of SARS coronavirus 2 specific IgM antibody of antibody titer in convalescent plasma than that in the acute phase. So let's take a look at the analysis of COVID-19 outbreak in Beijing's Xinfadi market. So inapparent infections account for about 9% of the total number of infections. And let's look at the rough proportions of clinical types of COVID-19 in adults. So mild cases, 15%, moderate cases, 78%, severe cases and critical cases, 7%. And at present, the proportion of severe cases and critical cases is relatively low. So we want to find, are they about viral factors? And also with early diagnosis, early intervention, and standardized treatment, then actually we also conclude that it is the reason that the proportion of severe cases and critical cases is low. And percentage of apparent infections and mild cases in children is significantly higher than that in adults. So when we talk about the history of TCM in fighting against epidemics, actually in the past 3,000 years, we can see in history, there were more than 500 large-scale epidemics. And Chinese traditional medicine plays an important role in the prevention and control of epidemics. And rich experience has been accumulated through clinical practice with many unique theories and effective methods developed. So China has gained very rich experience. So about COVID-19, how TCM feels COVID-19. Actually, we consider it in the category of epidemics, which is a damp and toxic epidemic related to dampness, heat, stasis, toxin, and deficiency. So it is highly infectious. And in terms of pathogenic dampness, it is obscure onset, it lingers, and it is difficult to recover from this virus. Also, it progresses very fast and dangerous. And the location of disease or route of treatment, we will look at pathogenesis, invasion of pathogenic toxin, lungs susceptible to the pathogen, deficiency of the vital chi. And location is in lungs and spleen. Our rules of treatment, including eliminating dampness, detoxifying, repelling foulness, resolving turbidity. So the location of disease is found mainly in the lung meridian hand tie-in, also in the spleen and stomach. And as the disease progresses, other organs may be damaged, for example, the heart, liver, kidneys. And the pathogenesis, the pathogenic toxin and pathogenic dampness can cause damage to the lungs and the spleen. And because in TCM, due to individual differences, the manifestations of disease may also vary in the form of cold, heat, dryness, static blood, and it also may damage yang qi or yin fluids.
So now let's look at the treatment of COVID-19. There hasn't been any effective drug for COVID-19. From TCM, we, first of all, for patients with mild symptoms, we alleviate their symptoms. Secondly, TCM can reduce the transformation from mild symptoms to severe symptoms. And then TCM can reduce mortality rate for severe patients. And also use differential treatment for the convalescent patients. And now let's look at the guideline for medical observation. And these are for patients on quarantine that we observe their symptoms, including fatigue, gastrointestinal discomfort. For these patients, we can give them Huxiangzhenqi capsules. And if the patient has fever, low fever or fatigue, we can give them Jinhua Qinggan granules, Lianhua Qingwen granules, capsules. And also, if it's a confirmed case, we have certain recipes for these different types of patients. And for practitioners, they can use different recipes for mild, moderate, and severe patients. And the Qingfei Paidu decoction is an important recipe in Qianghan Lun, the treatise on typhoid. The modified versions of this recipe is used. And we use 1 dose per day and 1 dose, and it's once in the morning and once in the evening after meals. And the precautions include that you can actually, it's recommended you use rice soup after administering the if the patient does have a fever, then we can increase the dosage. For the second course, we look at whether or not the patient has some background conditions, underlying conditions, then we can consider discontinuation of this medication. So for mild cases, the clinical symptoms are mild, including low fever, fatigue, or the loss of sense of smell and taste. And these are the symptoms for mild cases. For these patients, we have two types. One is cold dampness, and the other is stagnation lung syndrome. And the manifestations include fever, fatigue, sore body, cough, and phlegm, and chest tightness, sticky stools, nausea, vomiting, loss of appetite, and white tongue coating, and smooth pulse, etc., etc. And for these patients, recommend Ma Xing Shi decoction. And for this recipe, we use 1 decoction per day, and it's administered 3 times in the morning, at noon, and in the afternoon. For mild cases, we have something called dampness and heat accumulation lung syndrome. Manifestations include low fever, chills, fatigue, dry coughs, dry mouth, sore throat, etc. Sometimes including sweating or disturbed hydrosis. And if you look at the tongue, the coating is thin, and the pulse is smooth. And these cases fall into the dampness and heat accumulation lung syndrome. And we recommend this decoction. And it's decocted once a day, and it's administered in the morning and in the evening, twice a day. And for clinical classification, moderate cases include fever, respiratory symptoms, and pneumonia symptoms. And these cases make up 80% of the total cases. And the clinical manifestations include fever, cough, scanty sputum or yellow sputum. And the patient usually has tightness of chest, and constipation, bloating, and the tongue is dark red. The pulse is slippery and slippery. And we use these recipes. It is called 胸肺败毒 decoction. It's made up of 麻杏石甘汤 and 固杏仁汤. And it's a decoction every day, and twice a day administration in the morning and in the evening. So for the moderate cases, they fall into cold dampness lung syndrome, and the manifestations include low fever, dry cough, scanty sputum, fatigue, chest tightness, stuffy and full sensation in the stomach, nausea, and diarrhea. The tongue is white, sticky white, and we recommend this recipe. It's called 白月印 达元饮平胃散加碱 modified 平胃散. And these are all important recipes. And in the guideline, we have included 达元饮 in several of our recommendations in the guideline. And it's 1 dose daily in the morning and in the afternoon. For moderate cases, TCM improves symptoms, shortens the course of treatment, and promotes healing. TCM plays a role in improving the main symptoms of patients, especially symptoms such as fever, dry cough, fatigue, etc. And in this early stage, some patients may also have symptoms such as suffocation and pulmonary lesions. At this stage, these symptoms can be alleviated by TCM. Also, TCM has a curative effect on anxiety and dysphoria. It also soothes other emotional problems. So let's look at the severe and critical cases. For adults, if there's a progressive decrease in peripheral blood lymphocytes, a progressive exacerbation of hypoxemia or respiratory distress. Or you may have deterioration of tissue oxygenation, a progressive hyperlactatemia. And there's a progressive decrease and progressive increase in peripheral blood inflammatory markers such as IL-6, CRP, and ferritin, and also increase in D-dimer level. These are all the indicators for severe and critical cases. The clinical manifestations for severe cases include any of the following. So shortness of breath. If the respiratory rate is greater than 30 BPM, it falls into this category. And also SpO2 is less or equals to 93% in resting status. Any of these criteria is met, then the patient falls into a severe case. And also in areas with for the severe cases, we have two types. One is epidemic toxin and the lung closing syndrome. Manifestations include fever and flushing, coughing, bloody phlegm, also chest distress, tiredness and fatigue, nausea, loss of appetite. And for these patients, we recommend the 化湿败毒 recipe, which includes 麻杏石甘 decoction, 达元饮 decoction. And for decoction, you use 100 to 200 milliliters and 2 doses daily. And it is administered 2 to 4 times daily. And these are severe patients who might be in the ICU. So for those patients, we use nasal feed to administer the drugs. And another type, we call it blazing of both Qi and nutrient syndrome. Clinical manifestations include higher fever, thirst, chest tightness, delirium, blurred vision, etc., etc. For these patients, we recommend 七藻地环 decoction. And we recommend some proprietary TCM products. For example, 血碧瓶 injection, which is recommended by the government. It's one of the 3 recommended medications by the state. And we have other injections that are optional. You can choose one or several of them to use concurrently. In terms of recipes, as you can see, we have shigao, which is gypsum, fibrosum, and it's decocted, and it's 1 dose daily. it is administered twice to 4 times. For critical cases, if you meet any of the following, then you fall into the critical case category. So first, severe respiratory failure requiring mechanical ventilation, any kind of shocks, and organ failure requiring intensive care. And this is what we call excessive pathogenic factors. Clinically, for critical cases, we call it internal blockage and external desertion syndrome. The manifestations include dyspnea, asthma with mechanical ventilation, etc. And these are the recommended recipes. And we can also use Angong Niu Huang pills and Su He Xiang pills together with the recipe listed here. For these critical cases, the patients are usually on mechanical ventilation. If they have constipation and bloating, and we can use other medications to alleviate those symptoms as listed here. So we can use 血必清 injection, 热毒清 injection, 挺脑筋 injection, 双脉深脉 injection, etc., etc.
So the recommended usage of TCM injections for severe and critical cases are here. For viral infection or combined mild bacterial infection, we recommend 250 millimeters of 0.9% sodium chloride injection plus 100 micrograms of Xi Yanping injection bed, or 250 ml of 0.9% sodium chloride injection plus 20 ml of 热炖宁 injection bed, or 250 ml of 0.9% sodium chloride injection plus 40 ml of injection bed. So now let's take a look at the treatment analysis for severe cases and critical cases. They mostly have excessive pathogenic factors or weakened body resistance. So for severe patients with plaque poison and lung closing syndrome, we need to remove dampness and detoxify as the core treatment method. And for patients with blazing of both Qi and Yin syndrome, we need to clear away the heat, toxic materials as the focus, and to remove heat from blood and subdue pathogenic fire and purge lungs. And for critically ill patients, we care more about replenishing yin and yang. So during the clinical treatment, for patients with lung and spleen Qi deficiency syndromes, they mostly have shortness of breath, fatigue, and they vomit, have loss of appetite. So we mostly will give them this 六君子 decoction and medicine for promoting qi circulation and dampness. And also another case during clinical treatment is the deficiency of both Qi and Yin syndrome. So the patients mostly will have fatigue, shortness of breath, dry mouth, thirst, sweating, poor appetite, etc. And we recommend 圣麦散、猪叶石膏 decoction, 沙参麦冬 decoction, and hormoheologic agents. And to take one dose day, half in the morning and half in the evening. And so for recovering patients, TCM can facilitate the recovery process, can help them achieve recovery faster. And also TCM, we can also make use of Chinese medical physiotherapy. For example, Tai Chi, Ba Lan Jing, acupressure massage to help patients recover. So for acupuncture massage, it can regulate qi and blood, strengthen the body, and dispel pathogens. The acupuncture points include Feng Chi. Feng Chi is on the back of our neck and below the neck. So it's very easy. You just need to press and knead with the thumb to the degree of feeling partial soreness, once per bit and 4 repetitions of 8 bits. And another acupuncture point is Yin Xiang. It's at the midpoint, lateral to the border of the Alanesi. And another acupuncture point that would help is Shan Zhong. So it's here between the 2 nipples. And also another acupuncture point is Qu Chi. It's here with the elbow flex. You can find it. The point is at the end of the elbow. You can massage this point, and another acupuncture point is He Gu. He Gu is here, and also it's very easy. You can just massage it with your thumb, and also Zhu San Li can also help. So the TCM team in Fujian University also designed the Tai Chi exercise for strengthening the lungs and nourishing the heart to help alleviate COVID-19 patients' dysfunction. So through slow, fine, steady, deep breathing combined with movements and of starting, opening and closing, rising and falling, waving hands like clouds, etc. The exercise can help patients improve. And actually in the hospitals, the patients also do this exercise. This is the end of my presentation. Thank you very much, Dr. Ye. So TCM has played an important role in fighting against COVID-19 throughout this year. And now we know that China has already issued the tentative 8th edition of diagnosis and treatment protocol for COVID-19 patients. Thank you very much, Dr. Ye. Next, we will have the representatives from universities of Portugal. So we will first listen to professors from Polytechnic Institute of Setúbal of Portugal. We have Professor Sara Pereira and Professor Natalia Rowe. They will talk about TCM approach to COVID-19 in non-frontline healthcare services, prevention and post-infection recovery.
Podes cumprimentar primeiro?
Okay.
Good day, everyone, and thank you for attending. We will speak about prevention and post-infection recovery on COVID-19 in our clinics in Portugal. As we are aware, COVID-19 is spreading with unknown mutation mechanisms. No vaccine and no treatment are available so far. Users. At the same time, TCM in China has proven to be very effective in early prevention support to treatment and recovery. In Europe and in Portugal in particular, we lack for a plan adapted to the Western healthcare reality because we don't work at the hospitals or at the frontline healthcare. We need complementary and integrative actions from conventional and non-conventional health services. At the moment, we are working at our private clinics on prevention and post-infection recovery with acupuncture, herbal prescription, Tuina, diet, and so on. Also, we will let you know about a clinical case of eczema aggravated by COVID-19, and we will focus our talk on acupuncture, for the time is very short, to deepen other subjects. As we know, there is a Chinese protocol for COVID-19, and it seems to be based on China's historical experience in dealing with epidemic diseases. It also recommends prevention, that is early detection, early quarantine, and early treatment. The manifestations of the disease go from mild symptoms to severe illness, cough or fever, to acute respiratory syndrome, lung diseases. We know that TCM can reduce the incidence of severe or critical events. It also can improve recovery and ease symptoms as cough or fever. The theory of prevention and treatment of pestilence, referring to fatal epidemic disease, as a recorded history, as we all know, of over 2,000 years. Neijing suggested two aspects which should be employed to prevent the spread of epidemics. The first, to maintain and improve the healthy qi in the body by taking preventive medicine, healthy diet, care, and exercise, so as to resist the invasion of external pathogen. And secondly, avoid the source of infection. It also mentioned the idea of preventing as a key factor. So the measures to prevent before disease occurrence include staying away from the source of infection, interrupting the transmission, minimizing the environmental impact, especially on weak risk population, and especially building the body's self-defending ability against qi pathogens. After disease occurrence, active measures need to be taken to prevent mild conditions from developing into severe or critical ones, which would be very difficult, hard to manage. Also, as we have heard in the previous talk, it is also important to take precautions to prevent recurrence upon recovery. In traditional Chinese medicine, we know that the essential principles for disease prevention and treatment are to reinforce healthy qi by regulating body functions and reinforce the body's self-defending ability, and also to remove pathogenic qi, applying treatment according to etiological factors and pattern differentiation. In Portugal, and in our clinics in particular, the way we approach COVID-19 on the standards of TCM is quite different from that used in the Eastern countries, namely in China, as we have heard just before our talk. That is due to several factors, but mainly because we, TCM practitioners, are not frontline health professionals. We are not in the hospitals, therefore we seldom attend emergencies in our private clinics. And when that happens is because of misunderstood interpretation of symptoms by the patient himself. So in these cases, we immediately recommend our patient to dial Saúde 24, which is our phone advising public health service, or to see his physician, his clinician. Nevertheless, we TCM practitioners in our private clinics do apply preventive treatment and do integrate our post-infection recovery treatment in the treatment carried out by the Western medicine at the health centers or hospitals. In fact, we act before it can affect and after the disease has affected the patient. Having said this, both me and my practitioners, clinic colleagues are dealing with COVID-19 in two different moments. Preventing infection by educating and advising, following the rules of TCM and DGS recommendations, and advice for a good health, of course, stay away from pathogenic agents and environments, good life habits like diet, sleep, work, happiness, and so on. Prevention treatment of risk patients according to each person's qi deficiency or comorbidity, enhancing stimulating post-infection recovery. Either the patient had been subject to any treatment or to no treatment at all. Patients with no comorbidities or chronic condition, as hypertension, diabetes, cardiovascular illness and malignancy, lung disease, and so on. Patient with chronic condition prior to and aggravated by COVID-19. We have a clinical case of eczema to tell you about. And finally, prevention of recurrence after recovery. In any cases, using acupuncture, herbal medicine, Tuina, Qigong in some cases, and so on. Also mental adjustment and diet. The preventing strategy, with no vaccine, it is also very important to reinforce healthy qi, to boost the host's ability to defend against diseases. And for acupuncture, we select and combine acupoints according to the pattern differentiation, the affected channel, signs and symptoms, and of course, according to personal type or characteristics for a personalized treatment. Nevertheless, and above all, the base general acupoints could be, for example, ghost points, for they are good for epidemic diseases, not only for mental. In this case, these points can act both in infection and Shen, mental and emotional, disturbance caused by aggravated by the illness condition. I will not read about the points. Other people before have done so. We know them very well. Also confluent points, so they open channels and promote qi flow, easing body tension and enhancing recovery, which is our purpose, of course. Or according to etiology affecting the lung, either we use, in any cases, Fei Shu and Tai Yuan, and according to heat or phlegm in the lung, we will choose another different strategy to complete the above base points. It is important to remove on the phase for post-infection recovery strategies, too important to remove remaining pathogenic factors, viral in the case, and reinforce healthy qi by cleansing lung, removing dampness, stimulating the organic qi to defend himself against any type of qi pathogen. Herbal medicine, of course, we will let this chapter for the experts. Finally, we like to say that based on the general assumption that TCM supports the body's immune function to help fight disease and ease its consequences, TCM is a great contribution to fight COVID-19, whatever the stage of the disease, including prior to infection, during, and of course, post-infection recovery. Most importantly, acupuncture can condition the epidemic qi survival in the body, although it cannot eliminate it. Thus, the preventive approach could be, once again, the most powerful and effective strategy to fight the disease in our point of view. And to finish, I would like to say that we are looking forward to have a plan suitable for Europe and Portugal in particular. My colleague Sarah will tell you about a clinical case she has treated.
Hello, everyone. I will talk about a recent clinical case I treated in my clinic, in a non-frontline clinic. This patient has no comorbidities and no chronic condition. She only has eczema in the face, which aggravated really much with COVID. She started with symptoms on the September 3, and the acute symptoms ended on September 10. It was really fast infection, and the first negative test came on September 28. The face of the patient when she was with COVID was like this way. The acute symptoms, like I said, were mild, such as fever and dyspnea, but the most prevalent symptoms were this worsening of the skin. She referred a very white tongue with a thick cover that took a long time to disappear. In Portugal, these patients were followed up by the attending physicians who also prescribed anxiolytics because the patient was too anxious. I performed the first treatment the 15th of October, and at this time, the main complaint was severe fatigue. And the fatigue aggravated after lunch. This was the most prevalent symptom. The tongue was white hairy with very red edges and red tip, and the pulse was really tense. The patient was really anxious and really itchy, and the fatigue was really the most prevalent symptom. I performed acupuncture like the Natalia referred before, and the presentation before us talked so well about. And I performed also moxibustion to ease with the fatigue. And the results were these. Before the treatment, the patient was like in the left, and after on the right. And we keep on going on the neck. And the 19th of October, the patient reported considerable improvements in asthenia, but she reported that the itchiness keep on going and the face has no improvement. But as you can see, the face has really good improvement because she was like this on the left, and now she's like this. I can tell the anxious symptoms did not improve much because she was really worried about the itchiness and the redness. And it's noted that the patient is a dentist, and according to the contingency protocol in Portugal, she must wear a protective suit to work, which is extremely hot and discomfort. On October 20, the second treatment was performed. At this time, the main complaint was still some fatigue, which improved from the first treatment, and the tongue was a little bit better, and the patient redness was a little bit better also. We performed almost the same treatment with some modifications, and we keep on doing moxibustion also to improve the main symptom. And by this time, the improvements were really good. The left photo is from before the second treatment, and the right photo is after 2 days after the second treatment. This is a photo from the neck. And this is a photo 2 days after. The redness has improved a lot, the anxious symptoms also, and the patient will tell us that she was no longer with the severe fatigue. Okay, this is all. Thank you for listening to us.
非常感谢来自葡萄牙。
Thank you for your presentation from Setubal. Now, may we invite Monica Diaz from Arisa and Emilio Maya from Arisa as well. And they will be talking about TCM's role in relieving anxiety, fear, and depression as exacerbated by COVID-19.
Hello, everyone.
Yes, yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
First of all, I would like to thank the invitation to participate in this event. It is a great honor for me. I will talk about COVID-19 in a slight different perspective. Sorry. There is a slight problem here. Okay. Okay. I will talk about a brief presentation of ERISA school, the SARS-CoV virus, a brief overview, the therapeutic approach carrying out in Portugal for the treatment of the virus, and the other aspect, the other side of COVID-19, and the importance of medicine, Chinese medicine, in the diagnosis and treatment of patients with COVID-19. Just a brief presentation of ERISA school. We have several degree courses in the school, such as acupuncture. And this is where the school is situated, is located in Lisbon. Some photos of our city of Lisbon. And this is the main entrance of the school. And ERISA Dean is Professor Paulo Sargento, who will talk with us after my presentation. And ERISA Deputy Dean is Professor Monica Teixeira. So, the SARS-CoV-2 virus began in the early this year, and we have been under the threat of the health effects of the virus. Worldwide countries have taken several measures to combat and contain the spread of the pandemic. Several entities worldwide are investing millions of euros to find a drug to treat or cure the effects of SARS-CoV virus. The media is producing daily news about the pandemic. Daily, this virus causes thousands of deaths, thousands of infected people. The world economic is being severely affected, putting millions of jobs at risk, and insecurity is growing. In Portugal, measures were also taken to prevent the spread of the virus and to treat infected people, including social withdrawal, restrictions to free movement of people between cities, changing the opening hours of some establishments, for example, restaurants, coffee shops, etc. Prohibition or limitation of visits to family members in nursing homes, in hospitals. Adoptions, whenever possible, the teleworking, and most recently, the mandatory use of protective masks. In Portugal, mainly doctors and Occidental doctors and nurses were mobilized to treat people victims of SARS-CoV virus. Until now, Chinese medicine professionals have not been directly or indirectly involved in the treatments of the virus or its side effects. But the virus doesn't just have different health effects, direct health effects. Obviously, it is important to treat infected people and find a cure or a more effective treatment. But this pandemic suspended thousands of medical consultations and surgeries. The restrictions that have been adopted are creating great psychological pressure on the population, causing anxiety, fear of becoming infected, or losing their jobs, or losing a family member or a friend, sadness, depression, stress, social isolation of family and friends, and so on. All of these situations can affect people psychologically and, as you know, contribute to the emergence of other diseases. In some private practices, there was an increase of cases related to psychological factors. And the costs, direct or indirect, of these effects on the population's health will be high, both in terms of health and in terms of monetary. It is essential to mobilize people and governments to adopt measures in order to minimize these costs. In addition, it is important to treat convalescent patients infected by SARS-CoV virus. And here the Chinese medicine have an important contribution to strengthen immunity, but also in treating the side effects that the pandemic is causing: anxiety, stress, fear, and depression. It is important to alert our patients and check the level of the chain commitment, wherever the medical appointment is due to psychological or other complaints. It is also essential to check the emotional state related to the pandemic of our family, friends, and neighbors. But it is also very important not to forget our own shame. So I leave a question for everyone. How is your shame? Thank you.
好的，谢谢您 Emilio 教授。
Thank you very much, Professor. So thank you for Professor Emilio's sharing. Next, we will have another representative from ERISA, who is Paulu Sargentu. He will talk about the cognitive changes towards TCM in the West under the backdrop of COVID-19. Please.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, yes, yes,
Hi,
we can hear you.
hi guys.
We can hear you.
Okay, thank you. So, dear Madam, the President of Gmtcmpark Macau, Dr. Liu Wong, dear Madam, the Director of Center of International Cooperation Exchange of Gmtcmpark, Dr. Jessie Sin, allow me to thank you for the honorable invitation to greet you in a special way, and at a time when solidarity and friendship must be the main motives for human contact. And let me ask you the kindness of transmitting the best regards to Gmtcmpark team and to the community of the administrative region of Macau as well, a community with which we Portuguese people have a wonderful history of cooperation and friendship that time has known, and I'm sure will know how to deepen and to preserve in the future. Allow me also to greet all young TCM practitioners, students, teachers, and all colleagues from other institutions that today share this webinar, as well as people in the auditorium that showed interest in joining this very interesting and relevant initiative. Dear friends, please let me call you friends. Do you know why? Because the word friend in Portuguese language is written and spelled as amigo, exactly the name of the alliance that we represent here and that unites us, the alliance amigo, friend. Dear friends, it is almost a year since the world was surprised by the first very cases of a typical pneumonia in Wuhan, China, caused by new coronavirus. From the impact of these first very cases to the present days, the story is well known. We are facing the greatest pandemic of our century, and the whole world should try to join us in efforts to control it and repair its effects. The effects are multiple and global, as we know. For this reason, the action should have been concerted and solidary. However, there are clear threats to this desirable consultation or agreement and to the absolutely necessary solidarity. As the pandemic progressed, different ways of communicating began to take place, which produced a state of panic, distrust, and even visceral hatred that tends to be more harmful and disturbing than the virus itself. And this biased communication reached, unfortunately, a good part of scientists, or folk science, by definition, must be immune to this type of influence. From papers published with the information, no peer-reviewed yet, in the most unsuspected scientific periodicals, to violent and rude arguments between scientists who confuse opinion with scientific evidence, it has been possible to observe a little bit of all kinds of strange situations and political decisions. Sometimes it has been so hopeless that I obsessively repeat the famous sentence from the Medicine and Physiology's Nobel Prize in 1973, Professor Konrad Lorenz, when he stated, "I believe I have found the missing link between the higher ape and civilized man. It is we." Unfortunately, rationality and instinct are mixed up in the most critical times in the history of humanity, causing nuisances that last for time and reach several generations. For that, we should recall, for example, the Great Wars in the 20th century. Dear friends, I still believe that cooperation can be more effective than competition. And that's why I'm here today. I'm here to give you the testimony of someone culturally and educationally developed in the so-called West world, but who sees in the so-called Eastern world an integrating possibility of experiences, knowledge, friendship, and sharing. In short, the integration of efforts for a better world for all mankind, humanity. Dear friends, health is a universal right. Therefore, it must be accessible to each and every human being. I believe that all of you agree with me. So, the knowledge produced for people's health is one of the most valuable treasures of all times. And China has one of these valuable treasures, the traditional Chinese medicine. In this regard, let me remind you of what the President of China, Mr. Xi Jinping, thinks about this matter, a thought I fully share. He stresses that traditional Chinese medicine is a treasure in Chinese civilization, which carries the great wisdom of Chinese people. Okay? I dare to add something to this statement that I am sure will have the Mr. President's agreement and all Chinese people as well. A treasure of this nature must be shared with the whole world, as it constitutes yet another opportunity, another set of strategies, techniques, and knowledge that can substantially improve the health quality and the well-being for different peoples in different countries, in different continents. Dear friends, TCM's path in Europe is well known. Its fortunes and difficulties are more or less established. In the last 3 decades, the growing and progressive acceptance and demand of millions of people, both as an alternative and as a complement for health issues, is testimony to this that I'm talking. In fact, the Portuguese case at this level is absolutely paradigmatic. Of the few European countries where there have been bachelor degrees in acupuncture in operation for at least 3 years ago, and the expected beginning of bachelor degrees in TCM to start as early in the next year. Professional certification, thought the issuance of a professional card for these practitioners and the recognition of their technical and deontological autonomy by the Ministry of Health, within which we have called non-conventional therapeutics, it's also a testament of this visible progress. However, COVID-19 pandemic poses a strong threat to the development of TCM in Europe, I believe. As I started to mention, we are going through moments of collective panic and severe disinformation or misinformation that provoke a general feeling of fear and distrust in citizens. In addition to this relevant question, the growing conspiracy theories centered on China as the big guilty or origin of pandemic, mainly conveyed by representatives of some Western countries, such as the United States of America, more directly, or the United Kingdom and others, more politely, it constitutes another very strong threat, dear friends. The potential change in the conception of TCM in Europe consequent to the pandemic must be considered in several axes, in my point of view. Political diplomacy, economic investment, for example, in the support to consortia for the creation and development of specialized laboratories and hospitals outside China in European countries. Adjustment of TCM's scientific production to the established scientific paradigm based on evidence with increased indexed publication with peer review. Greater dissemination in the West of Chinese scientific, academic, and product structures linked to TCM, for example, the Gmtcmpark of Macau. Clear demonstration of the growing cohabitation between TCM and conventional medicine in public health and its success in China. Translation and edition of TCM handbooks into English, Spanish, and Portuguese languages. Development of strategies leading to the mutual recognition of academic degrees between China and European countries. Increase in academic mobility, development of several international Chinese European research consortia, etc., etc. Dear friends, these are just a few point of views of reflection that I propose to you in guaranteeing that the institution I share will continue to support the development of TCM, functioning as a double axis of influence to the Europe, the Schengen space, and Portuguese-speaking countries, African countries, and Brazil. And whether I or my colleague, Professor Mónica Teixeira, we will continue to be available to collaborate on the main goal of Alliance Amigo, of which we also are signatories, contributing to support young TCM practitioners. Thank you, Che, all best of you.
Thank you very much, Professor Paulo Sargento. Your talk was exciting and inspiring. And I also hope that people can have a better understanding of TCM in Europe. Thank you again, the representatives from Portugal's higher education institutions. So next will be our Q&A time. In this Q&A time, you can feel free to ask any questions on any of the topics in today's webinar. And if you want to raise a question, you need to make a request to unmute yourself, and then we will unmute you. You can also hit the raise hand button before you to show that you want to raise a question. And then we are also collecting questions on our other platforms at the same time. I have seen already a lot of questions. So I think maybe we can now connect to the first person who wants to raise a question.
Hello, everyone. I'm from Macau. I'm with the Ganwu Hospital in Macau. I'm very happy to be here, listening to your perspectives, expert perspectives. During the pandemic, TCM has been playing a role around the world. And lately, we have seen diagnosis of many asymptomatic patients. And I was thinking about the book, Shanghai Lun, the treatise on typhoid. And there's a excerpt that goes like this. The patient with 1 day of typhoid, the Taiyang meridian receives it, and the pulse is fired, then the disease doesn't spread. If the patient has vomit and the pulse is fast, then the disease may spread. So how can you correlate this with what we have seen, what we are seeing? I think we categorize the pandemic as an epidemic. In Chinese, we call it a wenbing. It is different from Shanghai, which is typhoid. And the treatment for COVID-19 is very different from that for typhoid. And the COVID-19 is considered a 大疫, which is epidemic in the Chinese medicine theory. So this is my response. Thank you. Many thanks, Dr. Ye. And I also thank her from Gmtcmpark Hospital in Macau. And I hope you get some understanding. You get some understanding from Dr. Ye's response. And our next question online. Let's see who is the next one to ask a question. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? So what's your question? Who want you to ask? My question is for Dr. Ye again. I'm a TCM practitioner in Kongyuan Clinic in Macau. And now it's winter, autumn, late autumn. So my question is, in the beginning of COVID-19 and flu, how can you differentiate the symptoms? How can you differentiate these two diseases, and how can you prevent them? Well, as we know, flu is caused by flu virus, which is prevalent in autumn and winter. And the onset of flu is systemic, high fever, sore body, numbness, fatigue. These are all systemic symptoms. But for COVID-19, it's usually low fever, fatigue, loss of sense of smell and taste. Only after 1 week does he develop some other symptoms. So again, flu patients have systemic symptoms, which are quite different from the symptoms of COVID-19. So if a patient has fever, I recommend that you send the patient for a nucleic acid test, just to confirm. So as long as it's available, have the patient do the nucleic acid test, please. Did I answer your question? Can you hear me? Well, the friend who asked the question, did you hear Dr. Ye's response? Well, he's probably muted himself, so that's okay. Many thanks to Dr. Ye for your response, and thanks to the question as well. So next question, please.
Okay.
Professor Sarah and Professor Natalia. Yes,
You
my
can,
question,
no perguntar.
my question is, know that in some European countries, when those doctors in these countries want to conduct TCM treatment to their patient, I want to ask what difficulties would they have? Like, for example, we know that some medicinal herbs or some tools used for TCM treatment might not be available in some European countries. So if in this situation, what would you do to deal with this problem? Yeah, that's my question. Thank you.
In Europe, in Portugal especially, we have almost everything we need. If you want some herbs that are not available here, you just ask for them. We have some colleagues who have special channels of communication with China, and we just ask for them. But in Portugal, we are not frontline healthcare workers. We are just in clinics, non-frontline clinics, and we just do prevention and post-COVID recovery. We don't treat COVID patients, okay? Active ones. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, I see. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for asking. Thank you.
Thank you.
Many thanks to Professor Sarah and Natalia. And for the same question, may we ask professors from ERISA to respond? Any of you? Emilio, Monica, would you like to respond to that question?
Said enough. We have in Portugal several access to herbal. For almost the situation it is sufficient to treat the patient. But as I said, and my colleague said, we don't treat COVID patients. We cannot treat COVID patients legally. So I don't have nothing else to add.
Many thanks, Professor Emilio. And we understand that TCM is not a frontline treatment to fight COVID-19. We also understand that many clinics are doing their best to provide TCM therapies to mild cases, patients with mild symptoms or unconfirmed patients to build their immune system. And we are very thankful to your effort. And now let's see who is the next one to ask a question.
In Portugal, at the beginning of the pandemic, we also have some associations that offer their service to the health minister, okay? But they were not accepted and it was not needed, okay? But it was offered, okay? Just to add, we are not frontline, not by choice, okay? Just by how things are.
Thank you.
Well, as we understand, you're not on the front line, but anybody who has contributed in the fight should deserve our respect. And again, let's see who is the next one to ask a question. we see there's a lady, Miss Chen. Hello, everyone, all the professors. Hello. Can you hear me? I have a question for Dr. Ye. In compound formulae, when we write prescription, we follow the TCM theories. My question is, for some more recent proprietary TCM products for COVID-19, are they mostly symptomatic treatment, or you use them to actually treat COVID-19? Thank you. In TCM, we call it differential diagnosis. We don't look at nucleic acid test results. If the patient comes and they have symptoms that we call a deficiency of Qi Yin or Qi Yang, and we use differential diagnosis according to TCM theory, and we don't look at the negative results of nucleic acid testing or negative results of nucleic acid testing. So that's my response to your question. Thank you.
谢谢，希望我们能
And thanks to the lady who asked the question. And I hope there will be many opportunities for us to interact, to exchange ideas. Let's see who is the next one to ask a question. We have many questions in the back end. They're in the queue.
Yes, 你有什么想分享的？
So my name is Sarah, and I'm a Chinese medicine practitioner from Macau, and I would like to ask my colleagues from Portugal if they notice an increase of mental disorders among the patients that are seeking the TCM therapies at the moment.
好的，我们
And let's see, anyone from the Portuguese universities who wants to respond to this question regarding mental illness?
Answering. Yes, we've noticed that is an increase of psychological effects on the patients and in the population. And unfortunately, it is not public, the real situation of the psychological effects of the COVID-19 and the pandemic. But yes, there is an increase of psychological effects on patients and in the general population.
Can I add something? Psychological organization of professionals, is Ordem dos Psicólogos, is doing some research in this area. We don't have results yet, like the colleague said, but we see also an increase in our clinics. But it's been made with this research. Thank you.
非常感谢，非常感。
Thank you both from ERISA, Emilio from ERISA, and also we would like to thank another Sarah from Macau, and we'd like to thank Sarah from Portugal as well. And now we have the chance for the final question. Dr. Gao, please. Just just a minute. Dr. Gao is connecting to the platform. Dr. Gao, we cannot hear you. Well, let's do something else. Today is a very opportunity. We talked about frontline fight against the COVID-19. We heard stories from Europe. And it's unfortunate that TCM practitioners do not have much chance to fight on the front line. But we're also very honored to have Dr. Ye, who has been a member of COVID-19 medical team twice, once in Hubei, in Wuhan, in Hubei province. She was also in the Philippines as a member of the medical team against COVID-19. So today is a very rare opportunity for us to hear something from the frontline worker. May we ask Dr. Ye to share your first-hand experience as a frontline doctor on the teams? Well, thank you for the opportunity. I was the 9th team sent to Hubei, Wuhan. And we were in Guanggu Ancang. And this hospital received mostly mild and moderate cases. According to our guideline, 80% of the patients fall into this category. And they come to this Fangshan hospital, a makeshift hospital. I was in Wuhan in February. It was very cold there. And we thought nobody was in the street. It was really a very interesting sight. And once we were in the hospital and we saw how brave Wuhan people were. And let me tell you just one story. These hospitals, we call them makeshift hospitals. In this hospital, it's basically led by staff from Fujian, our hospital. And we have a team to run this hospital. The hospital has over 800 beds, and we're from Fujian province. We were in charge of about 200 beds, and our shifts was 6 hours, 2 doctors, 6 nurses, and also some supporting staff working together with us. And their role is very important. And every time we go together, and they escorted us when we go there and when we leave the hospital. So these supporting staff are very important to us. And we didn't know much about the pandemic at the time. And when we arrived there, I was the only a doctor there. Other doctors were from other hospitals. And the place we stayed, there was a distance of, if you drive, it takes about 40 minutes. And I work with a head nurse from another hospital. And we're all the best from each and every hospitals. And she actually had just come back from Africa on a medical mission. So I talked to this head nurse. We just chatted, and I asked her, you came back from Africa, maybe you're not scared of COVID-19, right? And she thought for some time, and she said, Do you believe it? When I left the country, I wrote a note, it's sort of a death note, because when I left the country, because she says, I'm on the respiratory team, and I'm on the respiratory team, and I thought I could do prevention and I should be all right. And I didn't expect her saying something like that. And she says, in Africa, I know what to prevent, because there's AIDS, there's TB, and I can protect myself. But for COVID-19, it's a new virus. I have no idea what kind of prevention I should take to protect myself. So we're talking only about confirmed patients. And as you know, these are the hospitals are not really heated, and each patient had a heater under the bed. And she asked me, do you know the concentration of the virus? The viral concentration in the hospital? So, and I started thinking, yeah, it's quite dangerous. And what she said about the danger, I realized how dangerous it was. And also, I was quite impressed by people in Wuhan. And everybody, all the patients were taking some kind of TCM medication. And some people may have indications for some TCM medication. But they're not really afraid of that. And my colleagues also think when people are really brave and great. And there's a patient, we ask him to open his mouth to look at his tongue. And the patient says, please stay away from me. I don't want to infect you. I don't want to infect you. I was really moved by what he said. And later on, we were sending some patients away from the hospital. And the procedures were quite complex. For these cured patients, they need to be sent and quarantined in community for 14 days. And they need to be tested for nucleic acid. And the community doctors come and receive these patients. And one of the patients was following me. And we were in this protective gear. And I don't know why he's following me. I asked him, why are you following me? He says, can we take a photo together? And I was in this very heavy protective gear with 2 face masks and a goggle, a pair of goggles. So it was really quite, not something I enjoy to look at. But he asked me to take a photo with him because he wanted to take a photo to keep it as a memento before he left the hospital, because he wanted to remember the people who helped him. And as you know, we couldn't bring our mobile phones into the hospital, and we couldn't take pictures ourselves. But I think many of them wanted to take photos with us, and they were very grateful, very thankful to the medical teams. And they just wanted to keep these photos as mementos, something to look at when they think about us. And these photos were all on the patient's mobile phones because we couldn't bring our phones into the hospital. Thank you, Dr. Ye. here on the screen, you can see only me and my colleague. And we are actually about to burst into tears. It was really moving. And some of my key colleagues in the room whom you cannot see, they're already crying here, listening to what you're saying. And we're very thankful to all of you and to those who are not on the front line, who contributed to the fight against COVID-19, including people from colleagues from Europe and from other continents. And we would like to thank you all for your contribution. And because of this, we haven't given up. I believe we will win this battle in the end. Thank you all for your sharing, for your participation. And I would like to also thank the audience who asked questions. And we have learned a great deal. Like me, like my colleague sitting here, we have learned many points of view, many new information, and we will think about that afterwards. And I'm also very impressed and honored to have met all of you, experts around the world. And I think we will carry out events, online activities such as this one in the future. And you're all welcome to look at the accounts on various media channels, and you're all welcome to follow us these channels. So once again, dear friends, dear experts, dear professors, on this note, I conclude today's event, the 8th edition of Gmtcmpark TCM. I look forward to seeing you at our next event. Thank you. Goodbye. Thank you. Goodbye.